Hey everyone, let's talk about what is Bitcoin backed by, or another way of putting that is what backs Bitcoin. The quick summary is that Bitcoin is backed by humanity's need for money as a technology to avoid what's called the double coincidence of wants, which is what makes barter so unworkable. So humans need money as a technology, and as long as we need money as a technology, there will be a need for good money. Now, which money is chosen as humanity's preferred form of money is determined by the monetary properties, and specifically the credibility of those monetary properties of each of the potential alternatives. And then what backs Bitcoin's specific monetary properties is math, cryptography, and the computing network that backs Bitcoin, and I'll talk about each of those things. So let's start with the basics. And first, from a big picture perspective, a lot of people get hung up on this question of what backs Bitcoin, what is Bitcoin backed by? It's a perplexing question. In fact, a lot of people get hung up because they can't even answer the question, what is money? If you ask an average person, what is money? They really get hung up on what is it? I know what I use it for, but what is it at its, fundamental? So anyway, this is it's a complicated question, and I'm going to take it apart piece by piece. So what is Bitcoin backed by? Bitcoin is backed by humanity's need to have money as a technology to avoid barter. I've talked about this before, but the short take is barter is unworkable in a modern economy. Therefore, we need money, and money is a way of storing our time and our energy for a later point at which we might want to spend it. Or it's an opportunity to store our time and our energy so that we can transact from a different person than the person we work for, to transact to buy a loaf of bread or a car or whatever it is. So money stores time and energy, and as long as humans have that need, Bitcoin is backed by that need. So all money at its most fundamental level is backed by humanity's need to use money as a technology. If a future reality emerged where humans no longer needed money because there was no longer any scarcity of the world, everything was plentiful, everything was free, nobody had to work, and all the machines ran and fixed themselves and all that sort of stuff, and land was plentiful and all that sort of stuff. If everything was truly unlimited, humans would have no need for money, which is probably, in my case, I would say, hey, maybe in heaven one day there will not be money because, what would you need to buy? What is scarce that you would need money to buy? Because, money is a way of allocating how you value things in a world that is scarce. But again, that's not the world we live in. So as long as the world has scarcity of any kind, then humans will have a need for money. Okay, so what is Bitcoin backed by? Bitcoin is backed by humanity's need to use money as a technology and the value of using money as a technology as compared to barter. Okay, so what backs Bitcoin more specifically? Well, the monetary properties of any asset are what determine the value of that asset as a money. So the US dollar has certain monetary properties, gold has certain monetary properties, and Bitcoin has certain monetary properties. And the best white paper to read related to this is put out by Fidelity, one of the largest asset managers in the world. And the Fidelity Digital Assets Group has a white paper called Bitcoin First Revisited. So if you Google Fidelity Bitcoin First, you'll see this white paper called Fidelity's Bitcoin First Revisited. So Bitcoin First Revisited has a table on page 4, and I'll show you what that, I printed it out, so I'll show you what that looks like. So on page 4 is a table, and that table shows the various monetary properties of different assets. So let's see if I can show it to you here. The table looks like, you can't really see it there. Anyway, table looks like that. It's kind of hard to see. Again, I'm holding a dog leash. I'm holding too many things. So, but anyway, in that table, it shows gold, Bitcoin, and fiat currencies. And the purpose of the table is to show how they compare to each other, which is a way of showing how the different monetary properties of the different assets compare. So in this case, hold on, let me swap hands because it's easier to hold my phone with my right hand. So on here, this is essentially a chart that shows how credible the monetary properties of them are. So you want a money to be durable, divisible, fungible, portable, verifiable, scarce, and to have a track record. Bitcoin is superior in all of those except for a track record because gold's been around 5,000 years and Bitcoin's only been around 16 years. And obviously, fiat currency has a bad track record too. But anyway, so if you go through each of these, you want money to be durable, meaning you can't, it can't be easily destroyed like a bushel of wheat. You want it to be divisible, so not like diamonds, because if you want to buy a loaf of bread, it would require an impossibly small diamond to buy a loaf of bread. Fungible, which means they're all the same. Again, that's another reason diamonds are not good money, is because not all diamonds are the same. You want something that, all the different units are equal. Portable, meaning it's easy to transport. And verifiable, meaning it's easy to tell if it's the real thing, if it's gold versus fool's gold. And then scarce, meaning there's a finite supply of it, which means it'll hold its value over time. And then a track record. So on this chart on page 4 of Fidelity's Bitcoin First Revisited, it walks through each of those and it compares them to gold, Bitcoin to gold versus fiat. So on those, essentially the reason Bitcoin wins is it has better and more credible monetary properties than any other asset. So in here, according to this chart, Bitcoin is better than fiat currency in its durability, fungibility, verifiability, scarcity, and track record, and it's better than gold in its divisibility, portability, and verifiability. Gold specifically is very hard to divide. I mean, if you want to buy a loaf of bread with gold, a piece of gold, you have to chip a tiny piece of gold off, and it just doesn't work to do that. Also, gold is not portable. In large value denominations, it's very heavy. You can't take it across borders without setting off a metal detector, and it's just very hard to move large amounts of gold around. And verifiable, gold is actually surprisingly difficult to verify. So if you have something that looks like an ounce of gold in a gold coin, there's no real way of knowing, is that actual gold or is that tungsten that has a gold plating on it? Or is it fool's gold if it's in a lump or a rock? It's just really hard to tell. So Bitcoin does not have any of those problems that gold has. So to recap, as we're talking about what backs Bitcoin is humans' need for money as a technology to avoid having to barter. What backs each of the potential monies is its monetary properties, and specifically the credibility of those monetary properties. So how likely is it that the fiat currency, for example, will be scarce, or how divisible is it, and how durable is it, and how fungible is it, and portable and verifiable, and all of those other things that I just walked through that are in the Fidelity report. And then we'll talk about Bitcoin last as far as its specific elements. So when you look at it, most people would not argue that money is a valuable technology, but then they get stuck on what backs Bitcoin because they look at gold and they're like, they think, gold, can be used for jewelry or industrial uses, so that somehow backs it. But the vast majority of Bitcoin's value is based on its monetary properties and the credibility of those monetary properties. So if humans were not using money as a store of value, and central banks had not been buying up tons and tons and tons and tons of gold over the decades and even centuries, then gold would be a fraction of its current value. So you could say, there are uses of gold that are not for its monetary purposes, but that represents a very small percent of its total value right now. So the total value of gold is something like $18 trillion. So all the gold in the world is worth in the ballpark of $18 trillion. And the vast majority of that is because of its monetary properties and the credibility of its monetary properties. Only a very small part of that value is due to jewelry and industrial uses. And then when you look at fiat currencies, people say, the US dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the US government. Well, the U.S. government is $36 trillion in debt, so, good luck with faith and credit right there. And also, the U.S. government, it can't make you use an asset. So they can make you pay taxes with an asset, but any asset can be converted to the government's preferred form of money right before you pay taxes. So if somebody says, the U.S. dollar will always be strong because you always have to have U.S. dollars to pay your taxes, it's like, but so that was the case in every regime that failed. Every failed currency throughout history, and eventually all fiat currencies always fail, every fiat currency throughout history has had the same thing. The government that controlled the fiat currency required you to pay your taxes in it, and eventually they hyperinflated the currency, and everybody just converted something else, some asset, real estate, gold, stocks, bonds, whatever. They converted that to the local asset before they paid their taxes. So the fact that you have to pay your taxes in a specific fiat currency really is not a meaningful reason why that currency will ever have value. So anyway, so the credibility of fiat currencies, of monetary properties, and the credibility of those monetary properties is low. Again, according to even the report from Fidelity, they rank fiat currencies relatively low, and that's obviously a large and credible organization. And same with gold. According to them, gold has, of the 7 criteria they list, gold is deficient in 3 of those, and fiat currency is deficient in 5 of those. And of course, the only reason fiat currencies took the place of gold was due to speed of settlement, which is what I've talked about before, is there was just no way in the electronic age in global economy to move gold around fast enough to keep up with the rate of economic change and the need to transact. And therefore, fiat currencies got laid on top of gold. Initially were linked to gold, and then of course everybody inflated away their currencies, and the link to gold was forcibly broken by the governments because they did not have enough gold to make up for all the promises. They wrote checks there they could not cash that represented gold, and then they forced it to not represent gold. So anyway, to recap, what backs Bitcoin? What backs Bitcoin is humans need to use money as a technology and the value of doing that. What backs Bitcoin specifically as compared to fiat currencies, which are made up currencies by the government, like the US dollar, or gold, is the monetary properties of each of those. And again, for a table of that, of fiat versus gold versus Bitcoin, refer to page 4 of Bitcoin First Revisited, which is a fantastic read, the entire report, but there's a table on page 4 of that that'll give you the specifics. And then what backs Bitcoin, specifically is the credibility of its monetary properties, which is backed by math, cryptography, and a massive computing network. So I posted something about this on Facebook within the last couple days under the same sort of heading of what backs Bitcoin, but I'll cover a few highlights in that. So Bitcoin is run by the largest, most powerful computer network that humans have ever built. That is what makes sure that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. The Bitcoin protocol is based on math and cryptography that has never been cracked and never been hacked and never been broken. And if the Bitcoin protocol or the cryptography behind it is ever compromised, the same would be true of bank accounts and everything like that. So if the ability to encrypt information, including Bitcoin, is ever broken, that'll obviously you'll have a lot bigger problems than just Bitcoin, which is, hey, you can't transact on the internet anymore, and all of your bank accounts are now, open to the public and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, Bitcoin is backed by cryptography and computing power, an epic amount of computing power that uses a fraction of 1% of all of the electrical power in the world, but that's still a massive, massive, massive amount of computational power that backs the Bitcoin protocol. And then ultimately, in addition to math, cryptography, and the world's most powerful computing network, Bitcoin is backed by the hundreds of millions of people who believe in the credibility of its monetary properties, I being one of them. And those people are buying Bitcoin because they understand that humans are going to need money, and this is a better money. And for those of us who have been using Bitcoin for years, it absolutely is a better money. You can use Bitcoin, and it's a currency that the government cannot debase, they cannot inflate away. And at any given point, you can look at how much Bitcoin you own. You can know what percent of the total 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist that you own. And there's no way that ratio will ever change. You will not find out, like people did in Zimbabwe last week, that however much of their so-called or supposedly gold-backed currency they owned, well, magically the government overnight devalued 40% of that overnight. So even though they held the currency the government claimed was backed by gold, suddenly it was worth 40% less the next day, and it wasn't quite so gold-backed as they had been led to believe, and that will continue to be the case for every single fiat currency, no matter how much the government promises that is not the case. So let me summarize here. Again, I know it's complicated. I'd recommend Parker Lewis's article, which is called Bitcoin is Not Backed by Nothing. I posted that recently. It's written by Parker Lewis. It's the website it's posted on is unchained.com. So that Unchained article called Bitcoin is Not Backed by Nothing by Parker Lewis is a great read, even if you only read the first 3 minutes of it, which is up to the first major heading. Even if you just read that, just the first couple minutes of that. Need for money as a technology to avoid barter. The value of any currency or any money is a function of, I should say, is backed by its monetary properties, specifically the credibility of those monetary properties. Bitcoin has the strongest credible monetary properties of any asset that has ever existed in the world. And therefore, over time, as every strong money does, will outcompete weaker monies as people trade in their powerful computing network, all of which has been safely securing, $1 trillion of value now, and has been running for 16 years, and has the highest uptime in the last decade of any computer network that humans have ever built. So it has higher uptime than literally anything else. So anyway, that's a summary. I know it's a bit technical, B a little bit theoretical, and that's what makes it. That valuable? What is that backed by? Like, here's a pine cone. What is a pine cone backed by? Well, the answer is a pine cone's not really backed by anything because it has very poor monetary properties. The only reason gold has been valuable for thousands of years is because prior to Bitcoin, it had the best monetary properties of any asset because it is the it's the scarcest element in something called stock to flow, which is how hard it is to make the next, to find 1% of it. It has the best stock to flow ratio of any asset on it. Read Bitcoin First Revisited by Fidelity, which is on the Fidelity Digital Assets website. Just Google Fidelity Bitcoin First Revisited or Bitcoin First. Read that and read Parker Lewis's article entitled Bitcoin is Not Backed by Nothing, which is on the unchained.com website. So happy to answer any questions, but hopefully that gives at least a little more insight into a complicated and theoretical issue, which is why it's hard to explain. Easy for everyone to understand all at the same time. So let me know if you have questions. Happy to do further videos about this or anything else. Thanks, everyone.